Welcome to the show, Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network, or the Texas Real Estate Mastermind. Welcome, everybody. It's just me today. Rob is in the hunting grounds today. Some people would say, well, he's out in the field. We call it the hunting grounds. He did he had a real estate program for years called Big Game Hunting. And he did it mostly with the folks in California, Southern California, which I thought was funny. Because, folks in California, not exactly big hunters, but he'd wear a safari vest and the hat and the binoculars, and he's hunting for real estate deals. And so he's out in the field today. I'm going to join him tomorrow. In fact, there's going to be a bunch of us in the field tomorrow, all running around. He has told everyone he's on this little mission to make $1 million in 4 months. He's going to do it in this one little market. And then I picked a little market. I'm going to do the same thing. But I'd like to get 28 properties. He's looking to have about 10. So in any case, he's out in the field doing that today. I was working with some of our bankers this morning, getting some tax stuff sorted out, opening up new accounts, doing all kinds of administrative stuff. I still have not made my presentation for tonight's meeting. At some point, I'm going to get to that, hopefully before the meeting starts at 6:30. So in any case, and I got to drive across town and all that other stuff. So it's going to be an exciting day. So let me tell you something that I was told very early on in my career, my real estate investing career, that I think is really important. And I was watching the show, the Bernie Madoff I don't know if you call it a docudrama or documentary. If you go to Netflix right now, it's trending. It's one of the top 10. So one of the things that struck me, and I get it, most people don't watch boring business documentaries. All I'm going to tell you to do is watch the first episode. That's all you need to do. Watch the first episode. Because the first episode sows the seeds for the future deception. So in 1965, he was a broker, and he was running this little mutual fund on the side, not registered with the SEC. And what happened in 1965 is there was a market crash, and he lost all of his investors' money. Most all of it. His father-in-law bails him out, and he pays back his investors, which is absolutely wrong. You don't bail out investors. You just don't. You bail out your first lien holders, your creditors. Those are your real creditors. But if you're an investor and you're bringing partners along for investing and the deal goes belly up, you lose money. One of the most sophisticated and brightest investors I ever worked with early on asked me this: Jason, before I lend you any of my family's money, have you ever lost money in real estate? Before I lend you any of my family's money, have you ever lost money in real estate? Now, I am horrible at lying. I'm just terrible at it. It's one of those things I'm not real good at. And you know what? I'm not looking to get good at it. So I just tell them the truth. Yeah, I've lost money in real estate. In fact, I laughed at the time. I'm like, I've lost a bunch before. I haven't lost any of my investors' money, but I've lost a lot of my own money. Now, I've made a lot of money, but I've lost some money. And he says, that's interesting. I said, well, why do you ask that question? And he said, before I lend anyone my family's money, I ask them if they've ever lost money in real estate. And if they say no, they're either inexperienced or lying. And I thought, isn't that interesting? He will only invest with investors that have lost money. He will only invest with investors that have lost money. It's not fun losing money. I can tell you that right now. Not fun. I lost money on a deal in December. We were going through the due diligence phase. We had a lot of money tied up. I want to say $5, $7, $8,000. It may not even be that much, but let's call it $5,000 just in soft costs. That's not EMD. That's appraisals. Not even appraisal. It's what was it? Inspections, option period, an initial survey. I was going to replot some land, so I had my replotter guy go out there. And the replotter guy, just to look at it, was $1,000. And the deal ended up not closing, lost $5,000. Now, if the deal closed, my potential upside was almost $2 million. So kind of worth it in the long run. But to go back to the Bernie Madoff situation, in 1965, his father-in-law bails out all of his investors. So he never really lost money. He never really had to own up to the fact that, hey, investors, we made the best decisions we could given the information that we had, and we still lost. That's part of investing. That's the risk in investing. And I think a lot of people miss that. They come into real estate expecting not to lose. I look at real estate, I look at any investing in the opposite. And that is, how can we lose here in a reasonable market? Now, if the banks crash and we go into nuclear war, that's not a reasonable assumption that's going to happen every year. What are reasonable things that are going to happen? Tenant tears a house up. House catches on fire. Material costs double. That's the material costs are up 50% in ACs right now because of the new SEER rating. We can have labor shortages. These are all reasonable costs, reasonable things that can happen during the life of an asset. So then you start to calculate, okay, well, what happens if the rehab costs 10% more? That's not that big a deal. It's still a good deal. What happens if the rehab takes twice as long? Well, you've got your carrying costs that are going to be twice as long. What happens if tenant tears a place up? Well, we do a lot of screening, but sometimes it happens. What do we do when we have to evict somebody? You've got all these things that you've got to consider with an investment. Now, if you're a part of a group that is doing a lot of real estate, you can avoid a lot of these pitfalls. That's why we have a mastermind group. You run into problems, you post in the mastermind group, hey guys, I got a question about this, or hey, we got a problem here. Who do you use? What do you want? And then boom, you get an answer back pretty quick. I'll give you a great example of this. When we have these little weather-related crises, we just had a freeze. We had a couple of properties, despite all of our best efforts, much less than last year, but despite all our best efforts, we had some frozen, busted pipes. Okay, so where do you go get PEX? In fact, from the year before, 2022, February, during the 500-year freeze, we were literally sharing information with everybody, like where to get plumbing supplies. So that's what you do inside of one of these groups. But what you're trying to do is just limit your losses. You're going to experience losses. There's going to be the inevitable sewer pipe that breaks, roof that leaks, HVAC that fails. But on a long enough timeline, that piece of property is going to continue to cash flow. And when you sell it, you're going to get that big equity pop, that big cash infusion from the appreciation of the property. However, you can still lose money. All the money I ever lost in real estate were from flipping properties. It was never from wholesaling. It was never from buy and hold. We get back from the break. I'm going to talk a little about losing, and then I'm going to talk about the CPI print that came out today and what's likely going to happen with interest rates. It's Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Mastermind. All right, welcome back. Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Mastermind. Oh, so I just got an email from Mike over at Adam Data, I always forget the name of his company. Yeah, it is Adam Data Solutions. Here's the headline. U.S. foreclosure activity doubles annually, but still below pre-pandemic levels. I'm actually going to post this on Facebook later. Everybody's going to freak out. Oh, my God. Foreclosure activity has doubled. Yeah, because you haven't been able to foreclose the last 2 years. So now folks are foreclosing. Banks are finally foreclosing. So losing money. At some point, you're going to lose some money. That's just the reality of investing. You're not going to get it right 100% of the time. And if you do, it's because you're inexperienced. I know people are not going to like that answer. Jason, I want to invest and never lose money. Go buy treasuries. Go buy treasuries. I never want to lose money. Go buy treasuries. That is the surest way never to lose a penny. Go put it in a money market. Go put it in a CD. Now, you're going to make about, I don't know what treasuries are at right now. 4%, 5%, something like that. Now, people will tell me, wow, that's a really decent deal. I'm like, well, I don't know. Inflation's running about 10. So you're only losing 5% a year instead of 10. Now, they're probably not. I bet it's around 7 right now. So CPI came out today, and this is the rumor on the street. So the Fed is likely to hike about 25 basis points February 1. And there might be another hike, but the other side of the rumor mill is this is probably where they're going to stop. And a lot of the smart guys that I read, not the clickbait, the world's going to end, the economy's going to crash, Putin's going to come in riding a bear armed with nuclear weapons and destroy the West. Like, all that nonsense aside, the stuff that gets you to watch the nightly news, those guys are usually not on those news channels. They're on the nerdy business stations. And this is what the nerds say. We are probably going to start rate reductions in December of 23. So I expect rates to stay about the same. Here's the crazy thing. Rates have been going up for about a year now. However, mortgage rates have dropped about 1.5%. We're down in the low 6s, high 5s. Most of the product out there, that's what they call loans. When you hear people talk about product, what they're really talking about are loans, loan products. Most of the loans out there are in those really low 6s, high 5s. Right, average is right around 6.1. If we start to dip where the average, let's call it not the average, the median is in the 5s, I think that's going to ignite a flurry of buying. Let's say 5, 5.5, 5.4, somewhere between 5.4 and 5.6. It's going to be like the COVID market all over again. There is going to be a massive amount of buying. There are a whole lot of people, homeowners, who are sitting on the sidelines. They want to downsize, they want to sell, they want to upgrade, they want this house, they want one with a pool or maybe on the lake. Everything is frozen right now. Here's what's amazing. Inventory is up 50% year over year. We have 50% more inventory year over year. But we are still below, like 40% below 2019. And active listings, this is the crazy number. This is how you know the supply side is decelerating. Active listings are down 17% year over year. Every home buyer is typically a home owner. It's very rare for a home owner to go rent. It's pretty rare. In fact, most homeowners who are leaving a house do not leave a house for another house. Usually it means they've passed away. They're in their permanent home. Like, if they're not buying another house, more than likely they've passed away. So the reality is that there is all this pent-up demand. You talk to any real estate agent, especially mortgage brokers out there that do retail mortgages, and you ask them, hey, what are your clients telling you? Well, they're looking for that right house, but rates are up, and they're not willing to buy right now. This is their first home. The median mortgage cost, principal and interest, is up $750 a month year over year. They don't want to pay that extra $750 a month. Quite honestly, I think it's silly because the house will appreciate more than that $750 a month. But anyway, that's a whole discussion for another time. Houses in Houston below $300,000 are appreciating 20% a year. They're appreciating $5,000 a month. This is why I keep pounding away on people. If you do not own the roof over your head, the smartest financial decision is you do that right now. That is more important than anything else. You need to own the roof over your head because it's getting at minimum 20% more expensive every year. And it doesn't have to be like, Jason, I'm just like a single dude. You know, I make some pretty good money, but, you know, I don't really want to buy a house and mow a yard. And it's like, look, man, get you a yard service. Get you a little house out in the burbs, $300,000, $200,000, $250. Move into it. If you still love to have your bros around, your roommates, rent a room or two. I mean, who cares? It's just you are going to want that financial investment because 5 years from now, that $250,000 house is going to be a $500,000 house. My prediction by 2025, I have to go back and look, was 25 or 26, that the median home price in Houston, Texas was going to be over $400,000. We're getting close. And when I made that prediction, the median home price was in the twos. And people looked at me like I was crazy. It was just like I said in October 2017. I said, if you think real estate's expensive now, just wait. Everyone laughed. No one's laughing now. You can look at the trend line. It's really easy to read. Demographics rules everything. In fact, here's a better way to put it. This might be a little sensitive for some of y'all. Biology rules everything. Look, we may be more reformed, more refined than our ancestors 1,000 years ago. You know, driving Lamborghinis, big bank accounts, fancy houses. But our biology is exactly the same. When you get to a certain age, you start having kids. Statistically, most of y'all are going to have kids. And you're not going to do it in your high rise in River Oaks. This is everyone gets all crazy when I say this at our weekend seminar. Guys, how does it start? And the older guys that have been through this know exactly how it starts. It starts with, we need to get a little dog. You're like, what do we need a dog for? Like, we're doing happy hours on Wednesday. I'm going out, hanging out with my buddies on Thursday, racing cars on the weekend. Well, we don't have time for a dog. And the older guys always go, and I'll say, guys, what is that older dog training for? Or what is that dog training for? And they'll all say, kids. And the younger guys in the room that had just got a little dog look around and go, wait, what? We're having kids. What are you talking about? I'm like, what do you think that little dog is, buddy? And they end up moving out to the burbs and having some kids. Oh, by the way, at some point, the little dog needs a yard. The 3-pound dog needs a yard. No, it's because y'all are having kids. You just don't know it yet. So biology rules a lot in our economy. In fact, when I do the class, I'm doing a how to raise private money class. I want to say it's in March. We're only taking 10 people. And the class ain't cheap. It's $3,000 a head. But one of the things I'm going to talk about is networking and really getting into the lizard brain, the hind brain of people. When we get back from the break, we'll talk more about interest rates and the economy. It's Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Mastermind. You ready to go? Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Mastermind. I just made everybody really uncomfortable out there. They're like, wait a minute, this isn't a lesson in biology. They're talking about real estate. I'm like, no, biology rules decisions. I can tell you that 100%. Everyone likes to think they're all analytical and I only go by the numbers. I'm like, that's not true at all. Your feelings and your biology and your biochemistry rule a significant number of your decisions. At some point, these millennials are having kids, and they're not having kids in the high rise. They're having kids in the burbs. And those houses are below $300,000. And those prices are going up. Here's the other thing that drives real estate: jobs. And if there's one thing we do really well in Houston, aside from producing potholes, is jobs. Lots and lots of jobs. I think we're hiring like 3 or 4 people right now. Like, we can't get I can't get the postings up fast enough, we will get a bunch of people that apply for it. But if we don't make offers to those folks quickly enough, they're gone. They're somewhere else. Like, good paying jobs are people who've got skills are in real high demand. But what drives all that? It's really biology. It's very interesting. So when I teach this class in March, and I don't even know if it's up yet, we'll send an email out, but we get into the psychology. When you go to business school, one of the things they'll tell you about business is, the definition of business is, providing, equal value, sometimes monetary, sometimes in trade, for the purposes of commerce. Some kind of lofty definition a Nobel laureate would come up with. I'll tell you what business really is. My business is your money. That's what my business is. And money has a strong emotional tie. Very strong. So when you're raising private capital, in fact, I just met with a bank this afternoon, and people talk about it being a relationship business. One part of that is commercial transaction. Hey, bank, I'm going to give you this piece of real estate. You're going to put a loan on it. I'm going to write you a check every month. And the reason you're going to allow me to borrow that money is you look at my personal financial statement. You see I got a couple of bucks, and I got a decent FICO score, and we got a lot of reserves and a bunch of other, and we've got the experience to do this deal. And they go, okay, here's some money. Pay us this every month. However, there's an emotional component there. You ever run into those people where you go, man, I just like this guy. Like, why do you like Bob? Why is Bob such a cool dude? I don't know. Just seems like a real good guy. What Bob has done is tapped in to the subconscious somehow. And there's actually a skill set in doing that. You're hitting certain emotional sectors of the brain that kind of lay dormant. You don't notice it. One of the things the human brain is really good at is making things efficient. Like, can you remember how you drove to work today? I don't remember. I don't remember what street I took. I just drove to work. Now, when you're first driving, it's terrifying. I don't think it was terrifying. It was a lot of fun. I went down this street, I did this, there was a red light here. But when you become really good at something, it just runs in the background of your brain. That's why some people say, oh, I can go out for a drive, and it just gives me the time to think. Well, like, wait a minute, time to think? You should be thinking about driving that 5,000-pound death machine. Well, your brain can drive, while at the same time you use another part of your brain to just kind of think about other stuff. And that's the emotional part I always talk about. One of the things I always say is, look, you've already made a decision. You just justify the numbers. Like, that's really you're using the numbers to justify the decision. That's really what's going on. That's why when I hear people like, oh, I never want to lose money in real estate. I'm like, why? We had a really long discussion in one of our partnerships. We got a deal that's got a little bit of, I like to call it a little hair on it. It's got a little trouble. We're turning around, no big deal. Happens in real estate. In fact, if I am surprised to this day that we went through one of the worst times to be a landlord. I mean, the federal government came out and said you can't collect rent. If they don't want to pay rent, you don't collect it. And by the way, you can't evict them. It was a wild time in real estate. The federal government took the Constitution and burned it. It's amazing. There will be a litany of constitutional scholars that write about this time. And of course, people say, well, you just challenge things in the Supreme Court. Supreme Court's closed, bro. They ain't holding court. Who do you appeal to? When the government says shut everything down, who do you appeal to? So you got to think all those deals, no cash flow. We were able to float them. Anyway, we got one of those deals that's got a little bit of hair on it right now. Getting it all sorted out, getting the ship righted. But a lot of it has to do with what happened during COVID. Construction costs exploded. My favorite was wood. Part of the problem with wood is most of the wood we get here in the United States comes from Canada. And Canada shut down like forever. Evidently, oak and redwoods and all that other stuff carry COVID. I didn't know that, but evidently these trees were real dangerous. So that created a shortage in supply. Then, since everybody's sitting at home with nothing better to do, every guy on the planet decided to build a deck or replace fence. So demand surged. So what happened? Prices went up. All the while, I'm trying to reframe an apartment complex. So anyways, you're dealing with all these challenges. And how you deal with these challenges is emotional control. People freaking out, hair's on fire. It's like, well, what can you do about it? We made the best decisions we made based off the information that we had, and nobody put into the pro forma, hey, halfway through the rehab, there's going to be a pandemic where they shut down the country for 6 months. Now, are we supposed to model that for every deal we do going forward? Hey, Jason, what happens if the entire country gets shut down because Russia nukes D.C.? I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know how to model that. I don't know what it looks like. If that's the scenario you're running in your head, you probably need to go somewhere else. Oh, Jason, what happens if rents fall 30%? Well, considering that's never happened, could it happen? Sure. Is it likely to happen? No. But if you're modeling everything with a 30% loss to rents, you're not buying anything. So sometimes we get this emotional part of our ego that's like, well, what happens if the worst of the worst of the worst happens? Did you guys ever see that Saturday Night Live episode back from the 80s? Where it was right around when Jaws came out. But this shark could walk on land. And so the joke was there was this guy in a shark suit, and he would knock on a door of like an apartment complex, just like randomly some single woman that's home. And she's watching the news about these shark attacks like, in Wyoming, like Oklahoma or something, Georgia. Anyway, watching the news, and all of a sudden you hear this, who is it? Land shark. She goes, okay, opens the door, and the shark eats her. Jason, what happens when the land shark shows up to our apartment complex? I'm like, I don't know. Is it possible there's a land shark out there eating tenants? Probably. Is it likely it's going to show up at one of our apartment complexes? Probably not. Even though we do own a lot of stuff on the coast. And the land sharks would start eating people on the coast first. But that's what I mean by losing money. How do you handle losing money? In fact, we do an assessment with all of our new mastermind members when they come in the program. What happens? What would you do? How bad would you feel if you lost some money? This is Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Mastermind. Okay. It's Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Mastermind. The land shark is loose, eating people. It was called land shark, wasn't it? I think it is. We got to look it up. I could have sworn it's called land shark. I assume that's what the beer was named after. I might have it. Saturday Night Live. I think it was Dan Aykroyd was still there. I think it was called Land Shark, and he would literally knock on the door. Who is it? Land shark, and he would say it just like that. Land shark. He would come in and eat them. It was awesome. I'm going to look it up on the way home. So how do you handle losses in your life? Jason, I've never lost money in real estate. You're either inexperienced or a liar. Think about that. All of the pivotal moments of your life, and nothing ever bad happens to you. That's like saying Tom Brady never lost a football game. Michael Jordan didn't make the varsity high school basketball team. In fact, if you read through any number of the biographies that were written about him, that was a huge source of motivation for him. Oh, you're going to cut me from the varsity basketball team? I will just become the best basketball player ever. Tom Brady was the same way. What, a nobody pick? 200? He was picked number 200 in the draft. My favorite is when they took Tom Brady and they gave him the 3-game suspension for Deflategate. I sat there and told my buddies in my fantasy team, he will win the Super Bowl this year. And they're like, are you sure? I'm like, there's one thing you don't want to do. You make that dude angry, he will play angry. He played angry that whole season. I don't think he smiled until he hoisted the Lombardi trophy up in the air. Like, he was angry all season. Yeah, I'll show you what a cheater can do. And just rammed it down their throats. So what do you do with losing? What if Tom Brady never played a game he lost? How many games would he have played? I think it would have been bounced out of Pee Wee football. Well, I'm not playing. Jason, you don't understand. You don't understand. I'm not playing any game that I can lose. I'm only playing games I can win. Well, you're not going to last long, dude, in anything. You're telling me you're not going to go to work if you have one bad day at work? What if you have one bad year at work? You're not going back to work? What are you going to do, live under a bridge? You know, if I get one bad relationship, I'm done. I'm just going to live like a hermit. Oh, yeah, that's mature. That's good. You know, I get in one car accident. I'm not driving my car anymore. You know, you talk to guys that as they progress through car racing, cars start to get more expensive, parts start to get more expensive. I had a buddy of mine, his first Porsche he owned, which was a GT3. And he blew that up on the first track day. So he calls Porsche. It was just out of warranty. He calls Porsche and he's like, guys, kind of blew a motor up first track day. I think it was like the second lap. Porsche says, just bring it in, we'll take care of it. It's an $80,000 rebuild. I think I'd be sweating that one a little bit. I'm like, 80G. I'm like, I could see maybe blowing it up. You know, you've been riding that thing hard for about 5 years now. I mean, you're taking care of the maintenance stuff, and then you nuke one. It's like, well, you know, it's bound to happen. But first track day or second track day, a couple laps in, I'd be like, ooh, this hobby is pricey. Consequently, he now owns a shop that services Porsches, Ferraris, and Lamborghinis. He also does my Type. Me and another guy, we both have Type Rs, and he does our Type Rs for us too. What a funny story that is, huh? Took all of that failure and then built it into a business. Are you going to lose money in real estate? Absolutely. At some point you will. Jason, I'm only going to get into the fights that I can win. Well, your fighting career ain't going to be long. Heck, you're not even going to get through the first sparring match because you're going to get beat. That's the whole point. It's actually the whole point of sparring is get beat. I mean, not like beat up, but we're building skills there. So this whole idea that you're going to get into real estate and not lose a penny is juvenile. I mean, utterly childish. You got to think, I'm only doing stuff if I can win. In what endeavor of your life does that work? Jason, I'm only getting married if I can't, if you know, we never have an argument or a fight. That's ludicrous. Complete lack of maturity. We actually had an investor one time that we bailed out of a deal. And I told Rob, I'm like, God, I will never do that again. I'm like, that guy of all people needed to learn the lesson of what it's like to lose. Because here's the problem. For you parents out there, you know this better than anyone. If you take a child, and that's what you are when you're starting a new career. Real estate investing, you're starting as a child. And you never learn the lesson of loss, you are going to be a horrific adult. You got to think, you spoil a child so much they never lose. They never have a bad game. They never have a bad day. One of my favorite things about Boy Scouts, and I realize everybody's troop's a little bit different, their experience is a little bit different. One of the things I really like about my sons being in Boy Scouts with our particular troop is Our motto from the dad side, we don't tell the kids this, but this is what the dads say. This is a safe place to fail. And let me tell you what that means. Your son forgets their sleeping bag. Now, it's not real cold outside. Let's say it's in the 50s. They're going to shiver all night. Maybe they'll snuggle up with one of their buddies. No, you don't give them the extra sleeping bag. You don't give them yours. Now, if it's freezing and there's a real risk there, I mean, that's a kind of completely different scenario. But if they're just going to be shivering their little butts off all night, that is a great lesson for them to learn. Because you know what? I bet they don't forget the damn sleeping bag next time. In fact, when they're older, not even when they're adults, when they're older and we're at one of these high adventure camps, and we're at, let's say, 10,000 feet in Philmont, like we were this past summer, and by the way, at 10,000 feet, when it rains at night, it gets down in the 20s. I'm willing to bet you don't forget that sleeping bag when you packed up camp that morning. And that's when it matters. This whole idea of I can't fail as a real estate investor, I can't lose money, is completely childish. There is nothing in your life that is risk-free. Well, unless you buy treasuries. If you want to be put in this little cocoon, put in this little bubble, I never get sick, I never have a bad day, I never fight my spouse, my kids are perfect, they're not involved in any risk. We don't want them in sports because they could get hurt. We don't want to have too many friends because they could get, some disease or something, or they could end up in a fight. What a horrible life to live. We're going down to Mexico again here. You guys know I'm in Playa usually 3 times a year. And a lot of people tell me how dangerous it is. And I'm like, I've been down there so many times. I think Houston is more dangerous than most of Mexico. And I'm like, why wouldn't you want to experience how awesome Mexico is? Oh, it's really dangerous. Are you sure it's that dangerous? Now, some people legitimately can't go down there, law enforcement in particular. But man, to live a life that sheltered, boy, you're missing out on the fun. And if you never lose money in real estate, how do you know you're pushing the bounds of your investment skills? T. Boone Pickens filed for bankruptcy 3 times in his career. And every time he came back wealthier. You can go back and look at all the great entrepreneurs. All of them are littered with failures and bankruptcies. Anybody who's achieved anything great has a massive amount of failures in their life. Now, you've got to keep going. You're going to lose, but then you're going to make. You might lose some here, then you're going to make. That's how the world works. Thanks for listening to the show. We'll be right back in a couple of minutes with a brief message, and I will see you guys tomorrow. It's Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Mastermind.